mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Episode 4 of FX and Hulu's Atlanta, entitled Light Skinned It. Light Skinned It. I mean, I saw this title, I'm like, man, this episode gonna be a problem for me. Like, they're about to go in on me. It wasn't about me specifically, though. I am going to talk about kind of like the family dynamic that is at play here. But first, I want to start by giving a shout out to my patrons. If you're curious about joining the Patreon, what you get for that for the different price tiers, you can check out the major announcement video that's somewhere on this channel. And then also you could click the Patreon link, which is in every episode description, and it'll take you right there, and all the tiers are broken down. So shout out to Delvin Cox, Brett Factual, Dez, Justin Smith-Williams, Brian Turner, Dancing Lights, and Margaret Moffett. Like I said, you want to join the Patreon, get these shout outs and a number of other things. I have a video coming very, very soon. 2 videos, actually. One is going to be a review of the first 2 episodes of Amazon Prime's Tales from the Loop. And that was a request from a patron who joined at a tier where you get the request that I watch the first 2 episodes of a show, or the first or a movie, or the first season, depending on what tier you join. So I have a video coming for that, and then I have a video for Mike's Musings where I talk about all the shows that I watch that I don't cover on this channel. That's going to be a really good one because I got a lot of good content for that. So all that's on the Patreon. But enough about the Patreon. Let's talk about this Atlanta episode. So first, let me read the description that's in Hulu, because again, I always find those interesting. They're always tied to the show. The episode description says, "My family is so crazy, we need our own reality TV show. How you still got beef from the 70s? Whew! And y'all need to stop flirting with people's daddy." So this episode is really about black families, and kind of more specifically, black families with that like one light-skinned member of the family who's always doing the absolute most, which is why I find that the first sentence of the description to be interesting. My family's so crazy, we need our own reality TV show. Like, I feel like most black families are like this. So like, I feel like this isn't a level of crazy that necessitates a reality show. This is like kind of like your standard black family. But I want to say, what do I know? I know plenty about being in a black family. But I found this episode to be pretty entertaining. But I realized what it is about this episode to where part of me sits here and was like, well, that was entertaining. And then another part of me was like, was it entertaining enough? And I think I've realized, and I've touched on this idea before, this concept, but I think I've kind of like honed in on what my issue is with it a little bit more clearly. And I think season 3 and some of this season so far rely too heavily, almost entirely, on getting the reference. Like, getting who they're talking about. Like, oh, that's supposed to be this rapper, or we're supposed to be talking about this story from the headlines, or in this case, we're supposed to be talking about black families. And it's like, I feel like this show has turned into something where your enjoyment of the show relies on your ability to do like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme and point at the TV and be like, oh, I get that. I know what that means. Like, if you're going to do that, I still think what you provide needs to be fulfilling. And it needs to be fulfilling outside of, haha, I recognize that. And that's what I think this show is struggling with. And I think to a degree, that's what the people who give me shit when I do anything other than heap praise upon this show, I think those people are struggling to separate the idea of an episode of television being of high quality and you derived enjoyment from it because you understood the reference. Like, getting the reference isn't enough for me to be like, I like this show or I like this episode. Fortunately, Atlanta does a little bit more than that, more often than not. But I feel like that's kind of where this show is struggling. And I think that's why season 3 didn't resonate as much with a lot of people. And when we looked at season 3, we would talk about all these stories that they did, these bottle episodes that don't feature any of the regular cast. And those episodes relied entirely on getting the reference. And I think that when that becomes the focus, you lose out on a lot of the things that make for compelling television. And when you strip away the I understand what they're doing here. When you strip that away, you're left with a very thin, only moderately interesting story about this kidnapping of Ern's father, and this B plot story with with Ern's grandfather, and this B plot story with Ern's father wanting to get some time alone at the mall. It's like those are fine, but like they're not something where I'm like, Atlanta's the best show on TV because I watched an episode like this one. Like this one was fine, but like I guess it relies too heavily on understanding and getting the conceit of the episode. Like, oh, this is a commentary on this story. This is a commentary on this person. This is a commentary on this dynamic. And it relies so much on getting the conceit, it doesn't really entertain whether or not that story is worth telling. And I think that's kind of what is hurting this show, I think, to a degree. I still enjoy it, but I sit here in front of you guys and I'm like, let me talk about this episode of Atlanta, and I'm like, there's really not a lot of meat on these bones. And if you are someone who is from a family like this one, you're probably sitting there like, ha ha ha, this is funny. I know somebody like that. And if that's all you need to derive enjoyment from the show, by all means, this is your shit. But I need a whole lot more than I know people like that, or I know what they're referencing. I need way more than that to pat a show on the back. And like that, I feel like is all Atlanta's really giving me for the most part. So like, I think that's something that the show needs to, I can't say the show needs to get together because this is the last season. And I have no reason to believe that these final 6 episodes or so are going to be any different. But, I'm curious how we're going to look back on Atlanta in 10 years. And are we going to look at those first 2 seasons differently than the last 2? Are we going to look at it collectively as a 4-season show and give it its place within entertainment history? And if we are going to do that, where are we going to place it? Are we going to have like rose-tinted glasses over the next 5 years? Or are we going to end up with rose-tinted, or are we going to end up with like, not even rose-tinted glasses, but like, are we going to have the rose-tinted glasses over the, the next little bit once the show is over, but then 10 years from now go, yeah, it was fine. It was a cool show. Yeah, you don't need to watch, like how are we going to look at it 10 years from now? So, let me talk a little bit about the specifics of this episode, because there was a couple of things that I think are worth talking about. And if you are not someone who is in or know someone who is in a family like this, you might want to pay attention. So, I'm trying to decide if I want to talk about a certain aspect of this. I do think it is worth talking about. So, I mentioned it's relying heavily on getting the reference, and I didn't even speak about how that excludes non-black people. And to be clear, excluding non-black people from our shit is A-O-fucking-K with me. I have no problems with that. If white people are like, I don't get this show, good. You got 8 million other fucking shows that you can get. But if you are going to make something that is kind of exclusionary, or that's only going to appeal to people who get get whatever it is that you're referencing, I think it needs to be more entertaining on top of that. So like, that's all I'm saying. Like, if you're going to make it the focus or the audience so narrow, then you need to really pay off for that audience. And I've listened to other podcasts. I'm not going to throw names out there, nothing like that. I've listened to like podcasts that are done by non-black people, and they readily acknowledge like, this show is no longer for me. Like, there's so many things that I just don't get here, references I don't understand. And again, I don't care about that, but I will just say, like, I do get these things and I'm still unsatisfied. Like, give me something more than I get what you're referring to. That's really not enough. But I've gone on this tangent long enough. So we have an A plot and a B plot, like I mentioned. The A plot revolves around Ern, his mother, his aunt, his grandfather. His mother feels like the aunt is keeping the father away from her. She says she's going to steal him back, and they arrive at church, and that is exactly what she does. Ern and the aunt get out of the car. Mom and granddad take off in the car, and Ern and the auntie go into church, and they're having their whole church situation. Ern calls up the dad like, "Hey, can you tell me how to handle this?" He's like, "Nope, this is my time. Peace." And Ern decides he's going to sneak out. and he tries to sneak out. The aunt catches him, and she goes with him to the studio where Paperboy is at. And I think this is where this episode becomes very specific in who it's going to resonate with. So the aunt gets all the siblings on the phone, including Ern's mother, and they're all on speaker. She called the police. She tells them that before the police there, she tells the siblings that they don't like her because she's light-skinned, which is typical kind of like light-skinned victimhood, like constantly whining, bitching, complaining, doing the absolute fucking most, being extra as fuck. Like, as a light-skinned dude, I have no problem calling it when I see it, especially because I don't fucking do it. So, like, it's cool with me to be able to call other people on it. That's what's happening here. She being extra fucking light-skinned to the point where she calling the police, and that's so light-skinned. It's like, any other black person is gonna be like, do not bring the police up in here. Paperboy was in the background like, please don't call the police. I'm sitting here like, why would you call? Like, no black conflict has ever become better once the police are involved. Like, it always gets worse. So, like, she do some extra light-skinned shit, calls the police up there, and they call Ern's mother while she's out with the grandfather, her father. And he kind of, runs down, like, oh, yeah, I know who I'm here with. I know who I am. And then he lets slip that they've been in Egypt for 2 weeks, which is like his dementia slipping back in, I guess. But the whole point, really, of this is the idea of a black family who has a light-skinned family member who's doing the absolute most, doing all this ill-advised light-skinned shit. And, like, for me, particularly as someone who comes from a family like that and is a light-skinned person, though I'm not like this aunt, like, all of this, I'm just like, oh, yup, this tracks, yup, this is accurate, yup, that's how this goes. And I'm sitting there enjoying the episode. Like I said, like, I'm sitting there, I'm getting the reference. I'm like, okay, yup, all right, I got it, yup. And everything's cool. But like I said, at the end of the day, that's not enough for me to get up here and praise her or say that an episode is great. It's like, I sat there, I didn't feel like I was wasting my time or anything like that, because I got the references, I knew what they were doing, but it wasn't enough, like, to just get it. Like I don't really understand conceptually why you feel like this is an episode worth making. And that sounds way harsher than I mean it to sound, but, like, let's make a 25-minute episode that showcases how light-skinned people be extra in a black family. Yeah, like, does that feel like it's got some meat on its bones that, like, where you like, yeah, this needs to be an episode. We gotta make that. Does that feel like that's something that needs to be made? It doesn't to me. And, like, that's why I'm just sitting there, like, I'm like, this is cool, but I don't really need this. So there's a whole lot of, like, black familial characteristics to this family in this episode that are worth pointing out. I mean, just the fact, for one, that they went to church is, of course, they went to church, right? But then you got one thing I love that, and I'm gonna use this to kind of segue into the B plot here, which is we get a lot of classic old black man phrases from Ern's dad, who, if you don't recognize him, I forget I meant to look up his name on The Wire, but he's my man that was like, shit, on The Wire. Fuck, wow. I hate that I can't remember his name right now. But he does a lot of classic black phrases. Like, you see him walking around, he's got the Bluetooth in his ear, he's on the phone with somebody, he tells him, I'm just trying to get like you. What was the other one he said? Oh, when he's ready to go, I'm gonna let you go. I love how that's how black people get off the phone. It's not like we make it like we doing you a favor. Like, I didn't want to keep you too long, when that's our way of saying, I don't want to talk no more. Like that kind of stuff. Like, that's cool, that's funny. I like Cat Williams. Cat Williams makes his long-awaited return to the show, and he has a great line when the light-skinned auntie is complaining about Ern's mother kidnapping the father, and she's like, you can't kidnap your dad. He was like, I'll have time to explain it to you, but it's got kid in the name, so it's mathematically impossible. Like, what mathematically? But that's Cat Williams for you, man. But the B plot, like I said, is about Ern's dad. He's enjoying his time alone. He's kind of, when he talks to Ern, he's like, I put my 30 years in with this family. You can handle a day. I got this 3-hour time block where everybody's at church before everybody hits the mall. I can be in here. I can chill, have a good time, whatever. And that's his time to be alone. We see him getting like his shoes shined and all this good shit, right? And then he ends up getting finessed by this like beautiful woman at the hat kiosk who flirts with him, and which is the reference that we get in the episode description about flirting with people's daddies. You know, she flirts with him, suckers him into buying this hat. He buys the hat, and then he gets harassed by this teenager in the mall because he apparently spent too much time at the hat kiosk. So now church is let out, and now there's a bunch of kids in the mall, and he's like, ah, shit, and he's trying to get out. And he gets harassed by this one teenager. And I like how, well, before I talk about that, I want to talk about this specific scene because the teenager here, like, I wonder what motivated, I don't, it's weird to ask what motivated someone to inaction, but like, why did he take that, Ern's father? Like, you could have just kept going. Like, he had big one mic energy up until he got hoodwinked by the hat lady. Like, the whole thing, like, nope, I ain't got time. I do that shit at them all the time. Nope. Like, their favorite thing, look at, hey, do you need something to clean your shit? No, I don't need nothing to clean my shoes. No, I'm good. They tried to sell me shoe cleaner when I was wearing brand new shoes that had not been put on my feet once before. They looked at my shoes, started to make the pitch, stopped, and then resumed making the pitch. Like, it's ridiculous. But big one mic energy up until he gets hustled by the girl. And I don't understand why he tolerated all of this behavior from this kid. And I think this kind of I think for me personally, like, letting people be rude is unacceptable for me at this point, because I'm big on accountability, and I feel like a lack of accountability, as in I know I'm not gonna get what's coming to me or what should be coming to me after I do what it is that I'm about to do. That certainty of knowing that you're not gonna get what you deserve has emboldened people to be shittier and shittier and shittier to other people. And I'm a big proponent of making sure that people no longer make that mistake. Like, if you think you're gonna talk crazy to somebody and you think, oh, I'm a young kid at the mall, he just an old man, I'm gonna go up to him, I'm gonna roast him to his face, I'm gonna hassle, I'm gonna give him a hard time. You get your chest blown out, then we go see how many old people you fuck with after that. And like, I don't understand why the dad felt the need to take it. But that's not the point, because the point of it really, I think, is tied to what happened in the dinner scene at the end. So he walks out, he takes this picture with this kid for whatever reason. I don't know why he agreed to do this. And side note, I feel like this episode could be better in retrospect if we get another episode that continues this story, because I feel like we got the tip of the iceberg of a concept that could expand into something that's a lot more impactful. So especially based on the way I think this episode ends and what I took away from it, I feel like if we continue this story, like maybe say episode 8 or 9, we pick this back up, I feel like the 2 episodes collectively could be looked at a lot better in retrospect. But again, as a standalone episode, it was fine, you know, but whatever. So he leaves, and we close out the episode with them at dinner. It's Ern, Paperboy, Ern's parents, and the grandfather. And they're getting the bill, they're about to leave, and the mom realizes they never got bread, and she's like, yo, we need to get our bread. And Ern's like, yo, we about to leave anyway, what difference does it make? She's like, well, we paid for the fucking bread, we should get the bread. I'm like, cool, all right, whatever. Not a big deal, we can get the bread. She asked the waiter for the bread, another young teenage dude, and he's like, yeah, sure. He was like, you want me to hold off on the bill? She's like, no, you can still bring the bill, just throw the bread in the takeout container, and we smooth. And that should have been it. Admittedly, that should have been it. That should not have been an issue. And he's like, I gotta talk to the manager and make sure that it's okay to give bread out. Like, bruh, just get the fucking bread. And that's where the dad pops in. And he slams down the table and he says, I believe, just get the fucking bread. So, something to that effect. And the guy goes and does it. And I like that because I feel like that is a less consequential version of what black men kind of have to deal with a lot, which is the idea of having to like eat shit in places where you can't lash out, like, you know, at work or something like that, where you might have, you know, old white man boss who's coming down on you, ask you to do extra shit, talking to you disrespectfully, whatever the case may be. And because you are a responsible adult, you don't fuck that person up. You just eat that shit and deal with it. And then you have to and then you go home and then you kind of like find someone else who you could put that shit on. You let that rage out in the wrong place at the wrong time, directed toward the wrong people. And that's kind of just what we deal with, because we have to eat shit in these other avenues where we can't let it out, and then we end up letting it out at the wrong place on the wrong people. And I think that's, yeah, that kid was wrong for like making a big deal out of bringing the bread, but he way overreacted because he was still stewing about the way he knuckled under to that fucking teenager in the mall, his now shame at that hat, because I think he left and came to the realization like, I got hustled into buying this hat. So now he's ashamed of the hat that he got tricked into buying. He's ashamed of himself for allowing this kid to embarrass him and emasculate him to a degree in the middle of this fucking food court. And now he's somewhere where he has power again. He has say. He's the man of this table. And now he's got this little snot-nosed kid making a big deal about some fucking bread. Of course he's gonna snap at this point. So like that dynamic of what it's like to be a black man who has to eat shit in avenues of his life, and it's just like, I really want to do something here, but I have to be responsible because I can't afford to lose my job because my family's relying on me. I can't hold this person accountable for being a piece of shit because my family's relying on me. So I really liked how that played out at the end, and I feel like this episode, like I said, this if we continue this story, this 2-episode arc could be looked at as something that I think is really good. But, as of right now, it was just a fine episode. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was just fine. And it, again, like I said, it really relied on getting the reference. And I feel like now that I've put that out there, you guys can go back and look at like season 3 and look at future episodes of this season and look for that. Like, okay, how reliant is my enjoyment of this episode on getting the reference? Because if it's completely reliant on that, that's a failure in making a television episode, in my opinion. It shouldn't completely rely on getting the reference. If it does every now and then, cool. Every fucking episode should not have such a narrow focus on this specific. This group of people is gonna understand what we're referencing here, and it's not even so much that group of people is gonna love this. It's just that group of people is gonna get it. I got it. I didn't love it. So it's like, what are you really shooting for here? So, like I said, fine episode. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I will see you guys next week for episode 5. Peace.